Jeremy, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Obviously talking about Nicolas Maduro, who has been in court in New York today. He has described himself as a decent man. Do you think he's a decent man?
He's the president of Venezuela, and the issue is the illegality of what the United States have done. It isn't whether he's a nice man or a bad man or a good man or whatever. The question is, international law does not allow one country, even the USA, to go in and kidnap the president of another country. If they do that, how are they going to complain if anybody else does the same anywhere else?
Let me take on both of those things if I can. It does matter, surely, if he's a decent... I mean, is he a friend of yours? Would you describe him as a friend?
I've met him. I was interviewed by him on a television programme many years ago while I was at the UN Human Rights Council, and he was deputy to Chavez, as you know, and the country has obviously had enormous problems, not least because of the huge level of sanctions by the USA on it, and that has created a lot of problems. Now,
would you describe him as a friend, though, or an ally?
I don't know him well enough to be able to say that.
OK. The reason I say this, you say it doesn't matter whether he's a decent guy or not. I mean, this is from Amnesty International. You're an internationalist. Amnesty is an important organisation, saying that last year after the presidential election, 24 people died as a result of the government's repression. 2 of the victims were children, and 1 was a police officer. There's been arbitrary detentions on unfair trials. Now, let's park aside what the United States done for a second. Surely it's a good thing that he's not president of Venezuela anymore, given he is not a nice guy.
But that should be a decision for the people of Venezuela, not a decision for the US president, who is not interested in human rights. He's interested in oil.
Can you bring yourself to say that he's not a nice guy, that his regime has killed people?
I read the Amnesty report, and obviously I was very disturbed by what was in it. And I've also read a great deal and met a lot of people who've described the terrible economic situation that Venezuela faces. And so there's a twin set of problems there that have to be addressed. Now, if the US was serious about dealing with human rights abuses, which they are not. They're not anywhere in the world.
Yeah, but are you? That's my point.
Of course I am.
Well, you have to. Well, why don't you say categorically he was a pretty evil dictator?
You seem to be trying to move this whole conversation away from the reality of what Trump has done. Invaded another country.
But if you answer the question, if you condemn him, I'll move on.
Look, of course the human rights abuses are wrong. Of course they are. Okay. I've always said that. I've never supported human rights abuses anywhere, for that matter.
OK. So let's take on your second point then, which is this is from the Human Rights Foundation, again, another widely recognised international organisation. It says that last year's election was patently fraudulent. And that is the agreement of lots and lots of organisations and countries. Nicolas Maduro is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. He stole that election last year, didn't he?
That is the assessment made by quite a lot of organisations. It's not the assessment made by everybody in Venezuela. There are people who clearly do support Maduro and still do support Maduro. That is obviously...
Do you think he's the legitimate president?
You seem to be trying to move the whole conversation onto protecting Donald Trump.
Well, because you're saying that
you're protecting Donald Trump. You're protecting Trump.
Well, your party is claiming that he needs to be returned back to Venezuela, that he is the legitimate head of government, that he is the president.
Constitutionally, he is the head of government.
Well, I'm saying to you that in 2019 and 2024...
Who are we to decide what...
Well, I'm not... It's not we. It's lots of international organisations who follow these elections, lots of democratic countries around the world say that President Maduro stole that election.
And lots of countries around the world are now, today, saying that what the US has done is illegal, is wrong, and is a violation of all aspects of international law. Why don't you concentrate on that as well?
Well, we can do. Some of those countries, by the way.
That.
Well, we are. I mean, you clearly don't think the US's action was justified.
Of course not.
Of course, and you've made that point, and that is an argument that many people will agree with.
It's a clear point, a violation of every aspect of international law, and even governments that were not terribly supportive of Maduro, Latin American governments, Chile, for example, which was actually quite critical of Maduro, they have joined with other Latin American heads of state in saying this is absolutely wrong. Look at the statement made this morning by Claudia Sheinbaum, President of Mexico. Again, they weren't without criticism of Maduro, but they've said quite clearly this is an attack on all of Latin America that's gone on. And this is a very, very serious day in international affairs when the biggest armed country in the world, the USA, decides international law doesn't matter.
OK, and I've let you make that point, and it's a very important one, and there are many people at home and many people in Westminster who will agree with that. All I'm asking you is, do you think he's a thug? I think you're kind of suggesting he probably was a bit of a thug. My main question, though, is whether he was and should be recognised as the president of Venezuela, given the fact that many people, many well-recognised international organisations and countries say he has stolen not just one, but 2 elections.
He is recognised the president of Venezuela.
He's not by this
Can I
country,
finish? By a vast number of countries around the world, including
Iran,
this country,
Russia.
including this country, which maintains diplomatic relations with Venezuela at this very moment.